Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Yomam ajam anadim cha veti loka maheshwaram asamudha samatyeshu sarva papai pramuchyate. He who knows me as the unborn, as the beginningless, as the Supreme Lord over all the worlds, he only, undeluded about men, is free from all sins. This is 10.3. 10.2. No, I've been given by Mother Parvati 10.3. I've been given 10.3. See on my phone. Purport is stated in the 7th chapter, Manushyanam Sahasrashu Kashchit Yatari Siddhaye. Those who are trying to elevate themselves to the platform of spiritual realization are not ordinary men. They are superior to millions and millions of ordinary men who have no knowledge of spiritual realization. But although actually trying to understand their spiritual situation, one who can come to the understanding that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the proprietor of everything and the unborn, is the most successful spiritualized person. At that stage, only when one has fully understood Krishna's supreme position can one be freed from all sinful reactions. Lord is described by the word Aja, meaning unborn. But he is distinct from the living entities who are described in the 2nd chapter as Aja. The Lord is different from the living entities who are taking birth and dying due to material attachment. Conditioned souls are changing their body, but his body is not changeable. Even when he comes to the material world, he comes as the same unborn. Therefore, in the 4th chapter, it is said that the Lord, by his internal potency, is not under the inferior material energy, but is always in the superior energy. In this verse, the words Veta, Veti, Loka, Maheshwaram indicate that one should know that Krishna is the supreme proprietor of the planetary systems of the universe. He was existing before the creation and he is different from his creation. All the demigods were created within this material world, but as far as Krishna is concerned, it is said that he is not created. Therefore, Krishna is different even from great demigods like Brahma and Shiva. And because he is the creator of Brahma and Shiva and all the other demigods, he is the supreme person of all planets. Since Krishna is therefore different from everything that is created, and anyone who knows him as such immediately becomes liberated from all sinful reactions, one must be liberated from all sinful activities to be knowledge of the Supreme Lord. Only by devotion and service can he be known, and not by any other means, as stated in Bhagavad-Gita. One should not try to understand Krishna as a human being. As stated previously, only a foolish person thinks him to be a human being. This again is expressed here in a different way. A man who is not foolish, who is intelligent enough to understand the constitutional position of the Godhead, is always free of all sinful reactions. If Krishna is known as the son of Devaki, how can he be unborn? This is also explained in Bhagavatam. When he appeared before Devaki and Vasudeva, he was not born as an ordinary child. He appeared in his original form and then transformed himself into an ordinary child. Anything done under the direction of Krishna is transcendental. It cannot be contaminated by material reactions which may be inauspicious or auspicious. The conception that these things are auspicious and inauspicious in the material world is more or less a mental concoction, because there is nothing auspicious in this world. Everything is inauspicious because of the very nature is inauspicious. We simply imagine it to be auspicious. Real auspiciousness depends on activities in Krishna consciousness in full devotion and service. Therefore, if we at all want our activities to be auspicious, then we should work under the direction of Supreme Lord. Such directions are given in authorized scriptures such as Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad-Gita, or from a bona fide master. Because the spiritual master is the representative of the Supreme Lord, his direction is directly the direction of God. Spiritual masters, saintly persons, and scripture direct the same way. There is no contradiction in these three sources. all actions done under such directions are free from the reaction of pious or impious activities in this world. The transcendent attitude of the devotee in performing activities is actually that of renunciation. This is called sannyas. As stated in the first verse of the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita, one who acts as a matter of duty because he has been ordered to do so by the Supreme Lord, and who does not take shelter in the fruits of his activities, is a true renouncer. Anyone acting under the direction of the Supreme Lord is actually a sannyasi and a yogi, and not the man who has simply taken the dress of a sannyasi or a pseudo-yogi. Omagyantimidandasya gananjana shlakaya chakshunavritam yena tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manovishtam Savitamina Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swaha Parantikam. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasudhi Gaur Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare. So even if we look at our planet, Earth, among the 6 billion people, or how many people we have on this planet? 6 billion maybe? 7? Hardly anybody knows Krishna. Even in India, people have many concepts of Krishna. As many of them think that he's an expansion of Vishnu. That Vishnu is the highest and Krishna is an expansion of Vishnu. This is one misunderstanding. Or they think that God in the ultimate issue is energy and Krishna is, how do you call it, Swarup. His form is a product. Huh? Is a product of the material energy. And when he comes, he is manifesting itself from the impersonal aspect of God. And so then considering how many people are in this world, there are actually very few people who understand that Krishna is God. I mean, we have been distributing millions of Bhagavad-Gita over the years, and people have the book at home, and everything is Krishna says this, Krishna said that, and still they don't get to read it, because they don't have the karma to read it. You have to have some karma to read Krishna books, some good karma, otherwise you have no access to this philosophy. So neither do they understand the soul. You know, most people in Western countries, they don't have a clear, no Christian religion, no Muslim religion, no Jewish religion have a clear, defined concept of what soul is. They will say, I have a soul. And that's the general misconception, that we have a soul, but we are the body. But the truth is, we are the soul that has a body. It's just the other way around. And even top ecclesiastical people are in this understanding. When one pope was asked, do animals have a soul? He said, well, they don't have a spiritual soul. They have an immaterial but non-spiritual soul, whatever that is. This was Pope John the Second? I think so, the Polish Pope. No, it's not a Polish Pope. The Polish Pope said that. The animals have an immaterial but non-spiritual soul. But in the very moment he says they have, it betrays that he thinks that the soul is something you have. That's your possession, but it's not. It betrays very clearly that he doesn't have a clear understanding of soul, being transcendental to matter, and because the material energy is always changing, the problem is that the eternal soul is eternal, takes shelter in bodies which are very short-lived. 100 years is nothing. And so what to do? You know, if you're eternal, that means you always have been, you always will be. You're getting a body for 20, 30, 50, 100 years. What do you do after? You should take another body. And another one. You go from one short-lived body to the next short-lived body in various species of life, because you're eternal and the bodies in the material world are temporary. They undergo 6 changes from birth, old age, disease, and death, all the way to the final exit. And that's the preliminary, the predicament of the soul in the material world. That it, although eternal, najayati mliyati vakadachin, as Krishna says, nayam bhutva bhavita vanabhuya, it takes shelter in temporary bodies. It's just like I have now this pullover, and it is just a matter of time till this pullover shows cracks. You know, I mean, if you can give you a practical demonstration, this was a wonderful pullover at one stage, and now you don't see it because I keep it hidden. But even the nicest, that pullover I had for many, many years. You know, it's a very light, warm pullover, but in due course of time you can't avoid it. It starts tearing. And so then the same with this body, you can't avoid it. The body starts tearing sooner or later. And this is called old age and ultimately death, that the body becomes unsuitable and doesn't work anymore. You can see that in old age, that gradually the functions of the body start breaking down. You know, in my own case, I can realize that something is not working anymore the way it used to work before, and that's just the beginning of old age. Everybody of us will age, and he will realize the truth of aging, because before intellectually we understand age, old age, disease, and death. But we think inside that it doesn't happen to me so quickly. But it will. It's unavoidable that this body breaks down. And so Krishna's body never breaks down because it is not Brahma Swarup. This is what people call it. The Mayavadis call it Brahma Swarup, the manifestation of the Brahman. I one time met the leader of the Swaminarayan movement, Pramukh Swami. I think it was in Belfast, long time ago. And I inquired after, he was very gentleman, very nicely asked some questions, praised ISKCON. And then I asked his disciples later, how do you see him? And they say, he's Brahma Swarup. I said, what does it mean? Well, he's the impersonal energy of God has manifested itself in a person. Now, this is straight Mayavadi philosophy. There's nothing to do with, we are very fortunate that we have taken shelter in Srila Prabhupada. We could have taken shelter in so many different ways. You know, there are plenty of opportunities to get lost in this material world. But somehow or other, we ended up with Srila Prabhupada, and that's our great fortune, that we have been able to find this Krishna conscious movement. And it is due to Prabhupada's enormous exertion to preach Krishna consciousness all over the world. As Prabhupada says, he had so much energy, you know, that he wanted to put into this project that he got from his spiritual master and him to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world, that he circulated the words 14 times in a couple of years. Nobody has done this before. And he preached extensively in so many cities to the point of exhaustion. And in this way, simply by the power of tapasya, by the power of renunciation, was he able to create this large movement. It's based on tapa. It's like Lord Brahma. He could create the universe only after performing tapasya. It's the tapasya that gives the energy to do that. And so in the same way, Prabhupada performed an enormous amount of tapasya to be so successful, to have such a huge impact on the world that thousands and thousands and thousands, maybe millions of devotees starting to chant Hare Krishna, and the Hare Krishna mantra is going everywhere, and people are taking to it from all walks of life. And that is due to Prabhupada's tapasya, because he was very renounced. And so, let us continue with that. When we actually come to understand God, we realize that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the proprietor of everything, like Krishna says, Bhakti-yoga megatapasam sarva loka maheshwaram, that he's the owner of all the planets, sarva loka, all the places, maheshwaram. Suridam sarva bhutanam, at the same time, he's the greatest friend of every living entity. So we have, our best friend is really Krishna. And he's everybody's best friend. everybody has a very good friend that he doesn't know really. And by serving Krishna, by turning towards Krishna, we gradually come to know him. This is the power of devotional service. Because otherwise, what is this verse in Bhagavad-Gita? That in English, the soul may be refrained from sense gratification, but the taste. Huh? Varam Drishva Nivartati. But how does it start? What's the first line? Vishaya Vinivartate Nira Rasedena. Raso Vajram Raso Pyasya Param Drishva Nivartati. That when he experiences a higher taste, then he becomes fixed in Krishna consciousness. We see so many times now, particularly if you watch if you have an idea what's happening in the press right now, that so many child abuses have been taking place in the church. They reckon just in the United States about 30,000 cases in the last 10 years of child abuse. And what happens there actually? Well, it's very simple to understand according to this verse, that a priest joins the institution with good faith and good intention. But if there is no nectar, if there is no chanting, no hearing, no association with devotees, no Vrindavan, Mayapur, the Ganga, the Yamuna, Radhakund, Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad-Gita, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Tulsi worship, Prasadam, I mean, you can make such a huge things of wealth this movement has that we don't find in Christian churches. There's so much is there, so much knowledge, so much festivals, so many temples, so many, and we can see Krishna right in front of us, and we can worship Krishna. And Prabhupada said, when he installed these deities here in 1900 and what was it, 74, 5? 5, huh? He said, now you can go to Lord Nityananda and you can tell him, my dear Lord Nityananda, I have this and that problem. Please save me from this problem. And Prabhupada said, and he will do this for you. So we have such a direct access to Krishna here, particularly that we are in Vrindavan. Just go in front of Gaur Nitai. There's one prayer to Gaur Nitai that to Nityananda. Nityananda vadutendo vasudha prana balava janavi divitapati Krishna prema padapatu padmavati sudha shriman Sachinananda Purva Jaha Bhavonmato Jagatlata Rakta Gaura Kalivara. Who knows this prayer? Anybody who prays this prayer between 6 o'clock and 7:30 will go back to Godhead. Everybody. It's a very important prayer. And so I pray it all the time since years. If somebody wants me to send him the prayer, I will do so. You just have to give me an email address.
If somebody wants to join with the spiritual world.
Huh?
If somebody wants to join with the spiritual world, we'll be sure.
You know, it's an amazing prayer that Lord Nityananda, he's even more merciful than Lord Chaitanya, and he's Namo Mahavaranyaya Krishna Prempadaya Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namni Gora Tvishna Maha. He's already most merciful. Nityananda even more merciful. So we are, all of us, congratulations really, that we have arrived here in Krishna Balaram Mandir to hear Bhagavatam class or Bhagavad-Gita class, that somehow that we have been able to take shelter in Prabhupada's movement. We are very, very fortunate. And many people, if I look into my own upbringing, from all the people I ever knew, in kindergarten, in school, there's only one person who also joined the Hare Krishna movement. There's only one among 1,000, many thousands maybe. There's only one person. I don't know anybody else. And most of you will know yourself, you have the same experience, that even if I try to convince my family, it is not possible. It's not possible. It falls on deaf, even the best advice falls on deaf ears. It's not possible to explain. Even such a simple thing that meat eating is completely contrary, even health, what to speak of the health of the planet, what to speak of spiritually. Impossible, they go on, because they like meat. It's simply based on sense gratification. that people do all kinds of things. And so why is sense gratification such an important factor for the living entity? The mind and the senses crying for satisfaction. Why is that? Because people are spiritually starved. That's the point. When people are spiritually starved, they're hungry, they're huge, they're starved, they can't eat, they're spiritually undernourished. When people are the more people are spiritually undernourished, the more their needs they turn to sense gratification of the mind and the senses. If somebody is spiritually saturated, he has no interest whatsoever in material enjoyment. He's not interested. He's interested in Krishna's enjoyment. But if people are spiritually undernourished, then, like in this case I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, like a priest who joins the priesthood in good faith, because he's not getting nourished. He's alone. All of a sudden he gets installed and he's alone in his little house, and he doesn't have god brothers, he doesn't have people to confide in, he can't eat prasadam with somebody together, is only, what do you expect? He's undernourished. And so if one is spiritually undernourished, then all the bad habits from the past come back, it is just a matter of time. That's why this verse is so revolutionary. Raso vajam raso priyasya param dristvani vadati. By giving up such experience, by experiencing a higher taste, this is so necessary that one develops a higher taste, because otherwise one falls back. If you look at even the environmental crisis we have on this planet, or at all the whole planet situation, since time immemorial, this planet is going on under the phenomena of spiritual undernourishment. That's why there's one war after the other. Because if people are spiritually malnourished, then there's lust, there's anger, and there's greed. These three things: lust, anger, and greed. And why do people go to war? Because of greed. Why do people go to war? Because of anger. Why do people go to war? Because of lust. These are, as Krishna says in Bhagavad-Gita, the three all-devouring, devouring what? Enemies of mankind. So the whole civilization, even if you look at the environmental crisis, people are taking and taking and taking. They can't stop consuming, at the expense of the environment. People are eating meat like crazy, at the expense of the environment. The rivers are polluted, the ocean are polluted. Simply manifestation of greed, human greed, lust, and anger. And so these three things, lust, anger, and greed, have destroyed mankind since time immemorial. And that's why we have an environmental crisis, that's why we have war, that's why we have so many things, because people are spiritually malnourished. They're not nourished. They don't take scriptures like Bhagavad-Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam. They don't hear Hare Krishna mantra. They don't chant together God's glories. They don't do all these things. Then what do you expect? So poor priest like this, when he sits alone in his vicary, it's not surprising that they don't be able to keep the regulative principles, because they're not spiritually nourished. It's still better if you live in a monastery. At least if you're a brother in a monastery, you have other brothers that you can talk to. It's like a monastery is like a small family. I visited many monasteries in my life. They have very nice relationships among each other, and they help each other. And when somebody is sick, others care for him. So it's a kind of nice little community where people nourish each other and help each other spiritually when something goes wrong, even materially. But the normal priest is completely on his own. And if he doesn't have a wife, it becomes even more precarious, because a wife can see when the husband goes off the track. She can see that. There's no wife. I remember in our school in Germany, I was in a boarding school. It was a really, really good school. And we learned so many things, like spinning and weaving and pot making and so many metal work. And it was a school that was interested in forming character. And so in that school, before, if you wanted to become a teacher, you had to be married. You couldn't be a teacher in the school without being married. That was the first condition. And I saw myself how the music, somebody applied for being the music teacher. The director, he talked to the children first. I was sitting in the forum, I saw it. First he talked to the children, and he talked to his wife, then he talks to him. So he gets complete, clear picture what energy do we letting into our school. It's very, very helpful, and we had no history of abuse. There was no history of abuse. No, it never happened since the beginning of the school, because there was a husband and a wife and there were children there. This is a simple way of protecting yourself from child abuse. It's very simple. It's a simple method. So, but at the root of the whole thing is really the thing that the soul by nature is an enjoyer. We are part of Krishna is supreme enjoyer, we are small enjoyers. And so if we cannot enjoy spiritually, we have to enjoy materially. And if we give up material enjoyment by experiencing a higher taste, we are fixed in consciousness. This is the thing. This is a very simple but very profound formula that Krishna gives here in Bhagavad-Gita. Rasavajam rasupyasya param drishtva nivartati. That's the thing. And you can explain every phenomena in this world where something goes wrong, down to the fact that here people are spiritually malnourished. The people are in spiritual shape. They don't cheat, they don't lie, they don't steal, they don't, you know what I mean? I mean, if you think about it, if we were to stop even ordinary churches, if you throw religion out of the country, you cannot hire enough policemen to keep law and order. Law and order is still maintained by people going to churches, people have some religion, you know, that supports vastly. You cannot hire enough policemen. It will be total chaos if there is no, in the absence of religion. So religion does that. Religion infuses in people morality. The 10 Commandments are nothing but morals, what we should do, what we can't do. And so this helps humanity. There's some structure there, what you can do and what you cannot do, as we found in the Old Testament, or what to speak of Vedic scriptures. It gives some structure to people's life. And the lesser the spiritual experience is, the more people are inclined to sense gratification. And although we're living in a society of plenty, in a world of plenty, everything is there in plenty, but people are spiritually starved to death. That's what it is. And therefore in total oblivion to the spiritual opportunity. You know, they become atheists. Once a child dies, most people become atheists. The mother and father become atheists. Many cases, child dies. This is too much. A child dying for the parents, particularly for the mother, is too much to bear. We cannot imagine. I know from my own family, my brother died with 7 years of cancer, brain tumor. His brain tumor was detected when he was 4, and his skull was open. I could see the scar here. They just take a saw and cut the top off, and take a piece out and throw it back. And it went 4 times. He had to go to the clinic. It was just a trauma for me, for our whole family. That again we had to bring the crying child to the clinic. He said, "I don't want to go to the clinic." He said, "You have to go." And it didn't help ultimately. We didn't do him a favor. We should have let him die in the beginning. It would have been much wiser. Rather than running him through this torture, living with cancer in his brain for another 4 years or 3 years. But having said that, my mother stayed with God, but she never recovered. It was too much. It was her youngest child. She was mourning the child for the rest of her life. She couldn't get over it. So all these things are there because there's a lack of spiritual information, there's a lack of spiritual life, there's a lack of spiritual education, there's a lack of spiritual experience. Then people get so absorbed in material existence. If we are spiritually, if you have some spiritual knowledge, we can immediately understand that somebody has cancer, that it is a reaction to a previous life. But people in Christianity, in Muslim religion, in Jewish religion cannot understand this. And they go on mourning forever, mourning forever, but they don't understand that everybody is an architect, the architect of his own future. They don't see that. Because if there's only one life, how can you see it? How can you see it? As soon as we say there's only one life, we cannot understand the suffering of the world. We cannot, because fate can be so cruel. Fate can be extremely cruel. But if we were able to cross the threshold of life and death and go into the previous life or the previous life even, we can understand why exactly this had to happen to this person. Why? Like a child is raped in the forest. And the whole city goes crazy. How is this possible? This poor child. What has he done? But, and people doubt God in the presence of evil. Most people become atheists in such situations. Now, if there would be the witness of this case, and they would hear a voice and said, and exactly the same thing what you just did to the child will happen to you in your next life, then we would get an understanding how that works, and we wouldn't feel that it's unfair. Somebody does this, same thing will happen to him in a different setting, on a different planet, under different circumstances, but he has to suffer the suffering, mental and physical, he caused somebody else. You have to suffer. And so in the material world, people are overburdened with suffering, with karma, overburdened. And the only way to relieve oneself from karma is turn to Krishna. Aham tvam sarvapapi, I free on karma. That's the situation. Even if one chants the holy name only one time, more sins are forgiven than one is able to commit. It says in scripture. Not just one verse, many verses. So the chanting is so beneficial for the soul to reawaken his actual spiritual constitution. So most important, Lord Chaitanya, when he was asked what is the most important thing in spiritual life, he said it's chanting of Hare Krishna mantra. Immediately he said japa. Chanting of Hare Krishna mantra. Also bhajan. You know, the most important thing. Because it gives us a realization of God. The more our chanting becomes Shuddha Sattva, Shuddha Nam. The name is chanted purely, we get more and more deeper into our relationship with Krishna. It opens up gradually. After Anatta Nivritti, there's Nishtha, firm faith, and then comes Ruchi, that is taste. And on that platform of taste, Krishna reveals himself gradually. So one automatically is propelled, due to spiritual experience, personal experience, one is propelled to the next stage, which is bhava, ashakti, ashakta, that one becomes free, completely, separate from the material energy. And then from there it is bhava, the preliminary love of God, which is like the morning, the glow of the morning, the dawn, the morning dawn before the sun rises out of the ocean. This first is beautiful sky, reddish kind of sky, which is bhava, and then ultimately there's prema, which is the summum bonum of life, the highest achievement of a human person, of a human, if he comes to the platform of love of Godhead. So all this is due to the fact that one has to be spiritually nourished. Our movement is proper. He sat down and translated all these books simply so that we become spiritually nourished. That's the idea. He nourishes us by producing a profound amount of literature so that we can read and can hear Prabhupada. There's so many tapes more than 3,500 tapes we can listen to. In the evening we can listen to Krishna book. There are so many narrations. Amala Bhakta made a narration of Krishna book. You can hear Krishna book. And all these things nourish us in a very inconceivable way. We can't detect it, but it does readily. It's not the progress is not detectable from one moment to another. But the more we expose ourselves to Krishna, the more we become purified. That's why these temples are necessary, that people can expose themselves to Krishna. You see Indians, they come, a little boy, they're carrying their children with them in the temple. And so if you go to Western countries, you see that the Indian people, mostly, if they know there's a temple, they come. And I asked them, why are you actually coming? He said, well, my parents, I came with my parents to the temple. My whole life I've been coming to the temple. It becomes, this education becomes ingrained. It's just part of life. In the evening you go to the temple, because as kids we walk to the temple. And they do this, their kids the same. And so we are establishing this, and we bring children up in Krishna consciousness and expose them to Krishna as much as possible. Any exposure to Krishna is beneficial, is auspicious. Anytime we can expose somebody to Krishna by giving him a book or preaching to him Krishna consciousness or even convert him into a Hare Krishna devotee, it's all auspicious. These activities are auspicious and they're pleasing to Krishna. So if there's hearing, if there's chanting, if there's preaching, these three things, nama ruchi, that we chant, taste in the chanting, nama ruchi, jiva doya, that is giving Krishna to others, the sense of compassion, jiva doya. And then there is, what is the last item? Vaishnava Seva. Exactly. That's the third item, Vaishnava Seva, that we should serve the Vaishnavas. Like when, in my case, I'm giving a class, this is my service, for example. It's to serve the Vaishnavas. That being concerned with other Vaishnavas, because sometimes, particularly in Western countries, ISKCON can be very cold. World, because we have not learned the basics of Vaishnavism, which is really these three things: Nama Ruchi, Jiva Doya, and Vaishnava Seva. These are three important ingredients to practice Vaishnava religiosity. Okay, do you have any questions? Somebody? Yeah.
My question is about that we have knowledge of the past lives of our soul, the previous life soul is suffering, and then how can we put in the picture compassion? Because the parents want to think, oh, this karma, that karma, so what do I do?
The more one advances in Krishna consciousness, the more one tries to understand Krishna. And Krishna is very compassionate. I mean, the whole world is really a manifestation of his compassion. He puts us on a planet, he gives us grain to eat, he gives us milk to drink, he gives us fruits, flowers, vegetables, etc. He gives us so many things. You know, he gives us every day the sun rises, every evening the sun sinks, in between nature is working, everybody gets fed, and this is all Krishna's mercy. This is the incredible setup that Krishna creates. It's the whole material world is a manifestation of Krishna's mercy. It's just like a sandbox. The father creates the sandbox where the children can play with toys, so that they can get tired of it. In due course of time they will grow out of the sandbox. This is a simple example, you know. So in the same way, the whole material world is like a sandbox. Krishna's sandbox, and here we can toy around, and think that I'm driving a car, or I'm this, I'm that. We succumb to different illusions, but actually the whole thing is, in the long run, arranged in such a way that year after year, life after year, life after life, gradually one comes to higher stages of understanding and joins Krishna's movement and practices Krishna consciousness. It's Krishna's plan. This world is set up like this, that if we don't follow Krishna, then we have to suffer automatically. If we follow Krishna, then Krishna will relieve us from all kinds of anxiety and suffering. If we suffer now, it is due to the fact that we have not turned to Krishna early enough. Because if we turn to Krishna completely, then there is no karma. Like Prabhupada, he's told us that he doesn't suffer his karma. He didn't have karma. But Prabhupada suffered. And he used to say, these are the sins of my disciples. I was in the room when he said that to Krishnadas Babaji. And Prabhupada said, do you see how I'm suffering? These are the sins of my disciples. So spiritual master, transcendentalist, he doesn't have a karma to suffer. There's what karma? He's already on the transcendental platform. But he suffers because of his disciples. So in Hari Bhakti Vilasa it's described, the spiritual master suffers the sinful reactions of his disciples. It's clearly stated in Rupa Goswami, in Hari Bhakti Vilas. Yeah. I haven't understood a thing. Wait, start again.
Bhakti for me feels universal, but and as you said earlier, that all people know that they're past, and one person follows system. So, how come, in your opinion, the teachings of Bhakti, how come it doesn't resonate with everyone?
Does it what?
Resonates with everyone. So for me, myself, I'm still relatively new, and I'm trying to cultivate this higher taste that you spoke about. And for the people around me, I would love to share that, right? I mean, we talked about Ramanuji and Shiva and so on. So, do you consider Bhakti to be universal? And
you can preach only to those really effectively who want to hear. If people have to have the quality to hear. Now, if you look around, if you see your friends from the material world, they're not hearing. They have eyes and do not see, they have ears and do not hear. They're completely in the modern world. I know from my friends. And if somebody is like that, there's nothing you can do. Well, there's something you can do. You can feed him prasadam, you can spray again this water on his head, you can ask him to give a donation. That's all you can do.
I'm sorry, if I may just add one thing. I don't think anything is in black or white. I do, my friends in the material world, as you're putting it, they still have a spiritual element in them.
Sure.
Maybe they follow some yoga, but not this. Or they pray in their own way before they sleep, but they don't follow, per se, the 5 regulatory rules of Bhakti and the principles. So, so they, I don't know.
We see the way to God is not everybody's business. It's not that everybody creates his own staircase to heaven. If we want to understand God, we have to understand knowledge of God coming through parampara, through disciplic succession. It's where in Sakalani, Krishna says, Sakalaniya nata yoguna saparantapa. When the succession is broken, the knowledge is lost. So people are erring around and trying to concoct. I remember myself that I was a Buddhist at one stage and had my ideas and so many, I understood reincarnation, etc. And you think you got it all. But I was not advancing in spiritual life. So most people don't have the proper attitude to be a recipient of spiritual knowledge. They're materially so encaged. You know, when people are on the way, of direction into the spiritual world. It's very simple, very difficult to take them back from this trip. It's very difficult. But when somebody is open-minded, due to suffering, for example, then it is easy. You can speak to people who are receptive. People are not receptive. It's no use to talk to them. You might as well talk to your typewriter. You know, it's no use. So you have to ask yourself when you talk to somebody, can this person actually hear? Is he actually a candidate for hearing Krishna? And you will find, if you ask this question, with most people you meet, they're not able to do that. Particularly meat eating is highly destructive. People are meat eaters. Hardly a meat eater can come to Krishna consciousness. Hardly people who are not willing to give anything up. They want to go to God, yes, but at the same time they're enjoying the material facilities to its maximum. So when there's so much sense gratification, it's impossible to get through to people. And so another thing is when they become harassed by the material nature, when they're suffering, then it becomes easier. You know, say for example, somebody is a complete atheist, he's completely in the material world, he has a car, he has money, he has a house, he has so many things, and then something happens to him. He has a heart attack. The doctor tells him, you know, you're lucky that you survived, you won't survive another one, you know. That's a good start for many people to turn to God, to become serious, you know, by suffering. So Krishna, if we follow Krishna, he's happy with us. If we don't, then he smashes us, sooner or later, with some of the calamities of material life. And then people become open-minded. There's a saying in Germany, wenn ich hören will, muss fühlen. If you don't want to hear, then you have to experience. Or in English you say you have to learn the hard way. If you don't learn by hearing, you have to learn the hard way. And so, the hard knocks of life. But blessed are those who actually have some intent to hear about Krishna and to turn to Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada told us the devotees are very auspicious in this movement. It's very special. It's actually quite an exclusive club, the Hare Krishna movement. A lot of people could come, but you have to let something go. You have to have the desire to be free from material life altogether. It has to be there. When you tell this, most people are free from material desires. He doesn't even know what you're talking about. He says, there's God. He said, well, maybe. Can you prove it? You know, I don't believe in God. This is just a concept. It's a useful concept to keep people quiet, but there is no God. How many people there are atheists in this world? The overwhelming majority of people are demons. You know, so in this world to preach is not an easy thing. Most people who tried to, they got into great difficulties. Prahlad Maharaj is a classical example. Haridas Thakur is another example. Jesus is another example. And even Prabhupada underwent so many tribulations. You know, that if you become serious about spiritual life, it's not an easy ride. But most people are not able to hear. They're not able to hear. Most people. And so to speak to people who cannot hear makes no sense. I remember I drove one time a train in Ireland from Dublin to Cork. I sat down and I started chanting. And the man came and sat opposite to me. And he looked at me a while and said, what are you doing there? I said, I chant God's name. He said, Krishna, yes? I said, yes, I'm a Hare Krishna. He said, all this will not help you. He said, your chanting will not help you unless you turn to Jesus. He died for your sins. You will not be saved. All you, no matter how much. I said, hold on a minute. I'm getting up very early. He said, it's irrelevant. Jesus saves you. If you don't recognize Jesus as your only Savior, you cannot be saved. So I knew that it is impossible to penetrate. You know. So I said to him, I got the idea, that I said to him, I don't believe you follow Jesus. He said, why? I said, let me ask you one question. How much money you have in your pocket? He said, well, what does it have to do with the discussion? I said, I have a question, simple question, how much money you have in your pocket? So he looked up, he said, 100 euros. He said, give me 50. Love your neighbor as yourself means 50-50. Right? And he said, now hold on a minute. I said, love your neighbor as yourself. That's 50-50. And he thought about it a moment. He said, actually, coming to think about it, you're right. And he gave me 50 euros. And that was good preaching. That was good preaching because, there was no other way to get to him, and so he gave this money. So when you meet a Christian next time, enjoy. You can ask him this question, how much money have you got? What you have done unto the least of my brothers, you have done unto me, it says in the Bible, So we have to be clear when you go to a doctor, he's very trained to look for the symptoms. He asks you questions, he studies the body, he takes all the information from the person first before he gives a diagnosis. So in the same way, when we preach, we have to be discriminative. You cannot say to preach to everybody. You have to see if the person is actually receptive. Otherwise, I remember when Prabhupada came to Amsterdam, we had rented a hotel. It was in 1973 in Amsterdam near the Dam Square. Dam Square, where thousands of hippies were camping out. It was in the height of the hippie world. And so when Prabhupada was about to come, there was nobody in the hall. So we went out and I called up and said, I stood there like this and said, all of you, a Swami came from India and he will speak in 10 minutes. And after that there will be music, there will be a tremendous free feast, vegetarian feast, come all. And so hundreds of people came. The hall was filled in no time. Then Prabhupada came and he had a spectacle on. He looked at a text he wanted to speak on. And then he started singing. He looked over the spectacles at the people. And then he shook his head, took a spectacle and said to Hansaduta, and these people are useless. He just chant Hare Krishna and give them prasadam. And so he would get up and go out. He would leave. He said there was no point in preaching. He just gives them prasadam and has kirtan. And Prabhupada left because he saw he could not make a dent with them. It was impossible to get through because half the people were drugged. Half the people were drugged. Prabhupada didn't waste his time. He gives the opportunity, take a book, read it. You have to have some sort of craving there. There's some sort of sincerity that brings a person to Krishna consciousness. Without a little bit of sincerity, nobody comes to the Krishna consciousness movement. Not possible. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.